The morning sunlight in Charleston, South Carolina crept slowly through the half-open blinds, cutting thin golden lines across the quiet living room. Nathan Carter woke up on the couch with a heavy head and a knot of confusion in his chest. The air felt strangely still, like the moment before a storm breaks. He could hear soft footsteps somewhere down the hallway, hesitant, careful, almost afraid. When he sat up, the memory of the previous night rushed back in fragments, rain pounding the windows, a frantic knock on his door, and a young woman collapsing into his arms, shaking and soaked from the cold. Now she stood in the doorway wearing one of his old shirts, her expression uncertain and vulnerable, and the first thing she asked that morning would stay with him forever. She wondered quietly about the night before, about whether he had been the one who removed her soaked clothes while she was barely conscious. Nathan felt a sharp wave of guilt and compassion at the same time, knowing that his answer mattered more than anything in that moment. Before we continue this emotional journey, take a second to support the channel. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and stories that remind us how powerful compassion can be, please like this video, leave a comment, share it with someone who loves meaningful stories, and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps bring more heartfelt stories like this to life. Nathan Carter had always considered himself an ordinary man. At 32, he worked as a paramedic in Charleston and spent most of his days helping strangers through their worst moments. Yet nothing in his career had prepared him for the quiet responsibility that walked into his home the previous night. The young woman's name was Hannah Brooks, though Nathan hadn't learned that until hours later. What he remembered most clearly was the sound of thunder rolling across the harbor while he sat alone reading on his couch. Then came the desperate knock. When he opened the door, Hannah practically collapsed into him. Her face was pale, her hair plastered to her cheeks by rain, and her entire body trembled as though she had been running for miles. She was barely conscious, whispering something about not knowing where else to go. Nathan didn't ask questions in that moment. Instinct took over, the same instinct that guided him in emergency calls. He helped her inside, wrapped her in a blanket, and realized quickly that her clothes were completely soaked and freezing cold. She was shivering so violently that her teeth rattled. Every medical instinct told him that hypothermia could set in if he didn't act quickly. With careful hesitation, he did the only thing he believed would keep her safe. He removed the wet layers, covered her with warm towels, and placed one of his oversized shirts on her before laying her gently on the couch. It was all done with the careful distance and respect of someone who understood how fragile trust could be. He stayed awake most of the night in a chair nearby, making sure she kept breathing steadily. Now, in the soft light of morning, Hannah remembered almost nothing. She only knew that she had woken up in a stranger's home wearing someone else's shirt, and that kind of confusion could easily lead to fear. Nathan saw that fear in her eyes and immediately felt the need to explain, though words seemed painfully inadequate. He told her quietly that she had arrived soaked and half-conscious, that he had simply tried to keep her warm and safe. His voice carried no defensiveness, only a humble apology if his actions had crossed any line she didn't remember giving permission for. The tension in the room lingered for a long moment, heavy and uncertain. Hannah listened carefully. There was something about Nathan's tone that felt sincere, something that made it difficult to believe anything bad had happened. Her memories slowly returned like scattered pieces of glass forming a fragile picture. She remembered running through the rain after leaving a toxic situation she had been trapped in for months. She remembered wandering the streets with nowhere to go, terrified and exhausted. And then she remembered knocking on a stranger's door because it was the only porch light still glowing on that dark street. As she sat there holding a warm mug of coffee Nathan had just placed in her hands, Hannah realized how rare that kind of kindness was. The world had not been gentle with her lately. Her former partner had slowly isolated her from friends and family, leaving her feeling smaller and more powerless every day. The night she ran away was the first moment she had chosen herself in a long time, yet escaping had left her alone in the storm until she reached Nathan's door. Nathan didn't ask for her story, but he listened when she decided to share it. The words poured out slowly at first, then faster, like a dam finally breaking after months of pressure. He didn't interrupt. He didn't judge. He simply sat there, nodding occasionally, offering quiet reassurance that she was safe now. Sometimes the greatest kindness a person can offer is simply the patience to listen. Over the next few days, an unexpected friendship began to form between them. Nathan helped Hannah contact a local support center that assisted people leaving difficult relationships. With their help, she found temporary housing and began taking the first steps toward rebuilding her life. Yet she continued to visit Nathan occasionally, usually bringing homemade cookies or coffee as a small thank you. Their conversations were simple but meaningful, about favorite childhood memories, about the ocean breeze in Charleston, about how strange it felt that two strangers could suddenly become such an important part of each other's story. Nathan often thought about that rainy night and how easily things could have turned out differently. If he had ignored the knock on the door, Hannah might have wandered the streets alone for hours. If fear or suspicion had guided him instead of compassion, she might never have found the courage to trust another person again. That realization stayed with him deeply. Life rarely announces the moments that will define who we are. They arrive quietly, disguised as ordinary choices. Hannah, meanwhile, discovered something she had almost forgotten: the feeling of being valued. She started taking community college classes, something she had once dreamed of but abandoned during her difficult relationship. Slowly, her confidence returned. The timid woman who had once stood trembling in Nathan's doorway began to smile more often, speak more freely, and imagine a future she had nearly given up on. Months later, during a peaceful evening walk along the Charleston waterfront, Hannah told Nathan something that made him pause. She explained that the night she knocked on his door had been the lowest point of her life. She had felt invisible, forgotten, and broken. But one small act of kindness, a stranger opening a door and choosing to help, had reminded her that the world still contained good people. That reminder, she said, had changed everything. If this story is touching your heart so far, please take a moment to support the video. Like, comment, and share your thoughts below if you believe that even the smallest act of kindness can change someone's life. Stories like this remind us that compassion still exists in the world. There is something powerful about knowing that your presence mattered when someone needed it most. Nathan never expected recognition or gratitude. In his mind, he had simply done what anyone should do for another human being in need. Yet hearing Hannah describe how that moment had changed her path filled him with a quiet sense of purpose. Sometimes the greatest impact we have on others happens without us even realizing it. Special request: before the story ends, take a moment to comment the word kindness if you believe that a single compassionate act can change a life forever. Years later, Hannah would often tell people about the rainy night that redirected her life. She never described it as a dramatic rescue or a heroic moment. Instead, she spoke about a simple choice: a man who saw someone in trouble and treated her with dignity and respect. That choice became the foundation of her second chance. And Nathan, whenever thunder rolled across Charleston and rain tapped against his windows, sometimes glanced toward the front door and remembered the night a stranger knocked. It reminded him that kindness is rarely convenient and often unexpected, but when we choose it anyway, we may become the reason someone else finds hope again. So if this story moved you even a little, please like the video, share it with someone who believes in humanity, and subscribe to the channel for more emotional stories that remind us how powerful compassion can be.